Thank you for all being here. Just for those who don't know. Okay. Well, thank you for all being here. I'm going to start by giving a little background of me and the story, and then going into mushrooms, and then what makes these strains special. And as you know, with all food in the world, there's certain foods that you find are more helpful, more beneficial, and it has to do with maybe the strain or where it's grown or the environment that it's grown in. My background is I'm an entrepreneur. I'm also a scientist. I also done commercialization of projects such as in technology transfer. I've been a lecturer, I've been a professor, and this came about by me meeting a scientist where a strain of mushrooms was grown in Taiwan. And then others also sharing specific strains that were also used for the benefit of the benefits with reference to supporting health with animals and then also humans. And this all started in 2006, and the scientist in Asia shared with us that over about a 38-year period, he experimented with taking a mushroom that was in the wild of a specific species, bringing it into the laboratory, and then cultivating that mushroom on different substrates, or which are foods for the mushrooms, such as fruits, vegetables, or herbs. And the outcome of that was they developed over 300 strains, and one of those strains, when they fed it to transgenic mice and rats with tumors, the tumors would go away. And he was trying to find collaborators to help decipher the chemistry so they could find out what is the mechanism, what is the pathway, what are the molecules that are doing what to cancer cells in animals, and then the next step would be humans. But after reading all the science, all the researchers said, well, it's too vast, the chemistry that you find in fungi. Fungi is a different organism. It's not a plant. It's not an animal. Fungi is not a different organism. And they breathe oxygens like we do, but they don't need sunlight to grow. So when we were introduced to this, we then searched for more collaborators. And out of the world, we found other universities doing similar research with the same benefit, actually, with a fungi they took in the wild, and they grew it on different substrates. But in a laboratory setting, that's different in the wilds, growing something in the wild. You have a controlled environment, so in order to have the repeat chemistry that can be deciphered or extracted and to do experiments with, you have to have consistent chemistry. So what each university does is they make sure that it's a sterile environment. All the substrates are autoclaved, so that they're sterile. The air is sterile, so there's no competing yeast, bacteria, or viruses to compete with the fungi in the consumption of the substrate, as well as also to not contaminate when you're under the microscope and altering the chemistry of the fungi. Well, after 2 years of collaboration, I was in a business trip, and a colleague of mine, his best friend, he just got a phone call. He said, this was a Friday afternoon after a meeting. He says, my best friend just called me, and he has glioblastoma and stage 4 lung cancer. And they only give him a month to live. And I just shared with everyone at the conference table at that time what I was doing, and my team and other teams were doing. And the end of that was, I said, what do we have to lose here? We have a man who's not going to survive. Why doesn't each university ship to us what is most successful in the laboratory? And we did that, and we made a formula made from each strain of each university. And the outcome of that was, now we had a product that we thought might work, and what we did is we shipped it to the gentleman, and he said, based on your pathology, based on your weight and size, in reference to the mice and the rats that eat the fungi, you need to take 32 grams a day, which is about 12 to 13 level teaspoons. And he did that. He just added to his beverage, added to his food, just ate it. And in 5 days, he calls and says, I have a lot of energy. And then 22 days later, his physician called and said, there's a miracle here. All the tumors in his brain and his lungs were gone. That was a very wonderful surprise, a happy surprise. They didn't expect, or all of us didn't expect this of an outcome. But we then took the same formula and we gave it to 3 more patients, and we had the same outcome. So where do we go from here? Well, we can continue to research the why, what, and hows. We cannot call this a cure. What it is it's too vast to understand the chemistry, so we would not be able to articulate or patent or come up with the exact chemical breakdown that it would then pass for an approval for a drug under its current formula, which are basically, these are whole mushrooms, okay? They're mostly mycelium, and they're dehydrated, and it's a powder. So there's thousands of molecules there. So then what we did is we decided to beta test this while we continue to do the research. And we beta test with physicians in Hong Kong, Tokyo University, Cologne, University of Athens, and others. And the outcome of that was over 90% or 91% success rate with those anecdotal, if you want to call it, experiments with each patient. After we completed that, we continued to do the research. All our collaborators continued to do the research. But I then decided we can do research the next 100 years. That's not going to save a life. So we decided to put production in place with laboratories so we can produce this and maybe save a life. And that's what we did. And now we produce this, package it, and it's sold as a food. It supports your health, it supports your immune system, it supports your nervous system. And all the studies that each team has done, as well as our own review and experiments, is that there is a lot of beneficial chemistry. You'll find at our websites that we have at the Quantum Health Human Research Institute, we've articulated the science so even a Western physician would understand the science and basically say, wow, this is very impressive. That it should be sufficient for them to make a decision and say, I should purchase this or use this as a protocol or as an adjunctive support to support the immune system of a patient with a debilitating disease. And as oncologists have used this and others have used it, they've shared it with other physicians with patients with other debilitating or challenging diseases. And over the past almost 10 years now, we find that it's beneficial with literally any debilitating disease or illness. What we find is it strengthens the immune system, it balances the immune system, it also modulates the immune system for those who have autoimmune diseases. They're worried about, well, it's going to make my immune system too strong, it's going to but it actually modulates. The initial chemistry that was researched was beta-glucans, which you might have heard of before, in Tokyo and Japan, and many others now in the world are looking at different structures of the beta-glucan molecule. And that was part of the reason why they were doing a lot of experiments. What we see is it seems to, or we're hypothesizing, we know about some of the molecules, we know some of the mechanisms, but not all, is that it seems to take away the cloaking device of cancer cells or other mutations, or mutated cells, such as someone with MS that has lesions in the brain, for example. We find that the immune system now sees it and consumes it, and then your own stem cells repair, and repair very aggressively. We find that when the immune system is balanced and strong, also your redox or your communication molecules is increased, so you do heal like a younger person versus an older person. I can say that all the researchers in the world, and specifically these, is just to determine the right time to harvest that strain that they cultivated. Could take 10,000 or more experiments, because when you grow a fungi, like you grow even a vegetable or fruit, the time you harvest can make a difference in the chemistry that's in it. So harvesting at the right time will make the difference. So each university is able to determine, okay, this species, this strain that we've cultivated, the 23rd day under a controlled environment is the right time to harvest, even though we could grow it another 10, 20, or 30 days. So each strain is harvested, then it's dehydrated, and then it's ground into a powder. There's no additives, there's no preservatives. It's all done in a sterile clean room environment. All the substrates are organic, or certified organic. The facility is organic. And we've had product is shelf life of 7 years with this, that provides the same outcome. So as long as you store it in a cool place, do not freeze it. Why? It's still alive. Even though you dehydrate the mycelium, yes, there's some spores, but then the organism is still alive at that, even in the the hydration form. So you do not want to freeze it. We find that when you freeze the product or you freeze dry the product, you actually are killing some of the product. It's not as beneficial. We've also then, since that time, have developed other collaborators or developed relationships with other collaborators. So we have strains specifically that focus more on nerve growth or liver or even blood sugar. But the initial formula is used, which is called the Immune Health product, is used as the first product to consume. We also have teams looking at genetic defects, and we're hypothesizing that it can stop, and some are saying maybe even reverse, but that's two teams working on that as we speak, because we've seen anecdotally evidence with patients with genetic defects become balanced, and the side effects of that are reversed. We find that when the immune system is balanced and strong, and then your nervous system becomes more efficient, areas of the brain, such as those who have Alzheimer's, dementia, schizophrenia, they're bipolar. You can see a reversal just because the immune system is strong. And there's been studies at UCLA and Stockholm University as leaders in that area that prove that in the laboratory and with patients. We also find that when the immune system is balanced and strong, that your addictions also go away. And there's a Canadian university in Calgary that's doing those experiments. So the immune system is the key, and we all hear that in the news today, the food that you eat, but the microbiome is so important with all the beneficial molecules that we find them in the microbiome. And in the chemistry of these strains, we find this probiotic as well as this antiviral, antiparasitic chemistry. There's 6 molecules that cause the apoptosis of gram-negative and gram-positive bacteria, such as Lyme disease. We also find that it has most of the minerals, all the essential amino acids, transition metals, and vitamins that you can really sustain yourself on this product, the immune health product, where we've had patients and we've had others do experiments where all they did for 60 days was consume 32 grams a day with mineral or ionized mineral and water, and they didn't need to eat for 60 days, and they had no appetite and they had all the energy they needed. So that gives you the perfect example of a ketosis or ketone diet. When you have a ketone diet, you know, there's no glucose. So if you have cancer, your cancer cells cannot survive in that environment. And an experiment was done at the University of Florida with mice and rats, and we hope to participate with them to do a human trial. The molecular structure and or the molecular weight as well as the size of the molecules are so small, so it will penetrate the skin, it will penetrate the gum. So you can add it to an aloe or hand cream and rub it over your body. Examples is we've had coma patients, and they're in a coma, they've been in a coma for years or months, and we've taken the product and we rub it down over their body twice a day. In a week or a week and a half, they're out of their coma. And we need to prove now it's the communication molecules that is. Yes, there's a measure of increase of ATP. Yes, there's an increase in uptake of oxygen to your red blood cells. So really, if you look at all the healthful foods in the world, this is probably one of the better because it provides almost everything that you need, and even with less calories. Now, with reference to the nervous system, I just mentioned about MS or schizophrenia or you're bipolar or you have depression. When the immune system is balanced and strong, you can overcome that, and that's been proven. We even had psychologists and couples therapies and therapies with children see an enormous difference in 30 days. Or children with autism, the same thing. Do you have to continue to take this for a long period of time? No. But several genetics teams suggest we probably all should take 5 to 7 or 8 grams a day the rest of our lives to prevent genetic defects. But I said, well, prove that to me. That's your hypothesis, but prove it to me. And they're doing that. They're doing those experiments. We also found that with reference to your amino acids, this has all the essential amino acids, but we find that the serine amino acid, which is a non-essential amino acid in all of us, is essential, and it might be one of those with reference to reducing or even reversing aging, which in Taiwan, in initial experiments, and they see there's a proliferation of that consuming this product. So they've done tissue studies in the laboratory to show that. We also see that when you take high dosages of this, it reduces pain. Part of that is it reduces inflammation. So as you know, when you're ill, you have pain, you want to be in an inflammatory diet, non-inflammatory diet, such as more green vegetables. And on our websites, we talk about, for discussion, all the gurus on diets, from Max Gerson and many others. And you have to read and come to your own opinion. But I personally witnessed physicians that beat or were able to fight cancer going on a raw food diet 90 to 95% of the time. But if you do your research, not every vegetable is best if it's raw. Maybe there's the broccoli should be steamed or whatever. But that's for your own opinion, but the science and the facts are there for you to read. And so we also talk about diet when we talk about what foods to eliminate or refrain from. Well, the processed foods, you want to stay away from cane sugars, you want to stay from wheat, not necessarily because of the gluten, but there's other proteins in wheat which are harmful to our nervous system, and those papers were published in the 1970s by the University of Pennsylvania and the City of Hope in Duarte, California. So as we see, the American diet is suppressing the immune system, so that's why we have more illness. Not just here, but in Europe and even Asians today, those who are converting to an American diet or European diet, their immune systems are getting suppressed. The cell biology is enormous, and every scientist will tell you it's so vast, just the chemical reactions going on in the cells from moment to moment, that we'll never have all the answers. Even if we use a Watson computer or several others, they've proven that there's too many variables that even a chemist, even a researcher, even a scientist would never be able to compute all the chemical reactions going on in every cell of our body from moment to moment. So there's so many variables that it's literally impossible to say accurately if this drug or this food, something's going to come of that. But you have to remember, we as Homo sapiens or humans have been consuming foods for thousands of years. And that's what our makeup is. And we won't have all the answers, but it's like what happened here. Something worked. You go back to India, or you go back to China, or you go back to South America, go back to the Aztecs, go back to Egypt. And they've written a lot of things about certain foods. And it was well documented that certain herbs, certain foods were more beneficial. They didn't know all the reason why, but they said, well, this happens. This is the outcome every time someone uses it. So they recorded that. And there's been several documentaries on this. One is the Blue Zones. National Geographic documented there's certain towns and cities in the world where there's fruits or vegetables, and if you consume them, you have an improvement in your health. And it's now been determined why, and it all has to do with why does this fruit better than this fruit, or why is this herb better than this herb, why is this mushroom better than this mushroom? Well, what it has to do is the biophysics of the chemistry. It's how the molecular structure has been structured. And if you want to make it simple, most of the molecular structure is stable, neutral. There's less negative or positive charges to the atoms, so how those molecules bond is unique versus other. And in nature sometimes produces that in nature, but then you can do it in a controlled environment, such as these universities did with these fungi. Mushrooms have a lot of beneficial chemistry, but those that are not grown really in a sterile environment, or even food service mushrooms like shiitake you might find, or you might find button mushrooms and so forth, chanterelles and the rest, it's recommended that you probably should steam or saute them. Why? Because there is going to be some yeast, there is going to be some mold, there is going to be something on that product, there's going to be some contamination. Also, they were not grown in the most clean environment. There wasn't control of what's in the soil, what's in control of the land, the air, and so forth. Because fungi excrete chemistry. And the purpose of that excretion of that chemistry is to break down the substrate so it can consume it and take that chemistry back. That's how it breaks down the food. But those contaminants can contaminate that, and it can hold those contaminants while it's growing. That's why it's so important that you really need to grow strains, all strains if possible, in a sterile environment. We should not even be breathing the air that the mushroom is growing, so you're going to have the most beneficial chemistry. Now, if you want to compare this to fruits and vegetables and herbs, well, that's true for some of those too, but not as great as fungi, because that's what fungi does. It kind of sucks in and takes in what's ever in the environment and breaks it down, but not knowing when to harvest it, some of that may still be in that chemistry. What we've come up with is using Ayurvedic medicine as an example. When you add certain spices or certain foods together, you maybe get more with less. And we found that like sweet potatoes or rice added to this, or green vegetables. So in other words, if I want to take, let's say 20 grams of this, but if I add it to my green vegetables or my salad, I'll get the same outcome with maybe 14 grams. And it's because what we see under the microscope is how these bond with the carbohydrate molecules in the green vegetables. All foods are carbohydrate molecules, or what is called long-chain sugar molecules, but they're structured differently. That's including meat, that's including fish, that's including fruits, vegetables, herbs, everything. Remember, not all sugar molecules are equal. It's not a cane sugar molecule, okay? But they're sugar molecules. I'm not going to go into the diseases in general, but we find that when your immune system, it's like it's rebooting. And one team has said it reboots the immune system. UCLA did some recent studies on the immune system. And what they did is they actually block certain hormones, knowing that they were very important in the communication to proliferate the immune system. And when they blocked it, not that the immune system stopped, but the immune system, they used the word reboot. And what they found when it reboots is the T4 cells, which send a command to the T8 cells, send like a fresh command. And now, for some unknown reason, your soldiers, your T8s, are able to consume and fight something they were not able to fight before. They're saying that's happening with this product as well, but I believe it's more of the communication. There's an increase in communication between the cells. We've had patients in their 80s and 90s with everything from broken bones to broken tissue, organ damage, and you see them healing in a month or two versus 6 or 7 months. Well, again, it's more your own stem cells are doing the trick. There's no toxicity to this. We've analyzed even a pregnant woman, or if someone's allergic to penicillin, it's totally safe. We've had over 100 patients who are allergic to penicillin. None of them had a problem with this product. We really call this a miracle product because it has so much beneficial chemistry. It has, again, the antiviral, anti-parasitic, and the antibiotic chemistry that is natural. Is there any side effects? No, other than if you're very toxic, as with any chelation, your first 2 to 3 days you possibly could have diarrhea, but that's less than 3% of the people. You could have a night sweat. According to Hong Kong University, this is even better than typical chelation. You don't even have to use a coffee enema at all. It's not necessary with this product. So basically, it's like an adaptogen, or it really places no harm on your system. If you have cancer tumors or injuries, there may be some heat or sensitivity in that area. Why? The reason is your immune system is pursuing the cancer or the tumor, which is then causing some inflammation. So we've had cancer patients, for example, would have, let's say it was in their lungs or their liver or whatever, and then they say, I have something here in my back. I was feeling heat in this section of my back. They might have had a benign or cancerous tumor there. All the bone, it promotes bone growth. We've had some patients, it just really strengthens the bones. And so again, it's your immune system and your stem cells are causing the repair. Now, it's been many published studies in the 1950s and 60s have proven then why do we have a lot of disease, even at that time in the 50s and 60s, is because of malnutrition or insufficient minerals and vitamins in our diet. So having a balanced diet is important, but the other part of it is making sure that your body even has the ability to break down certain nutrients, because there's even genetic defects that say, well, you cannot break down iron, you can't break down this vitamin or this nutrient. So that's going to cause a problem. And so another suggestion is, other than getting tested, is you can maybe even get a genetics test to see if you're prone to a disease. I find through all the physicians and patients we talk to in the world that it's close to 50% of the time it's something genetic. So after the fact, they go get the genetics test and they find, oh, now we know. And as you know, there's many teams in the world that are coming up with other protocols and or drugs or biologics or a combination of things to reverse. But then we get back to the other science of, when we talk about the biophysics, why in nature has certain structured molecules exist in this plant versus this plant versus this plant. And it comes back to, if I go to MIT, the discussion is nature produces waves or nature produces frequencies. These are either sunlight, sound waves, or electromagnetic waves. And now that science knows this, scientists in agriculture are implementing this science to make better seeds so we can have better fruits and vegetables and herbs. So there's many teams in the world that have actually beta tested this. and that's the future for agriculture. So we have more beneficial agriculture. You have there with you some literature and websites to go to. So at your leisure, you can go ahead and read the science. And we have reference documents, actually over probably 700 reference studies between all the universities, breaking down and supporting the facts as to what molecules or what compounds or what acid molecules, enzymes, proteins, and what they do and how they're beneficial. You will find in the studies, though, that most of the time the research universities will not list the strain of the species and they will not list the substrate. They generalize. Part of the reason is they want to find the molecules and they want to make a drug or a biologic or sell the molecule. So they really don't go into the detail. But if you have the opportunity of traveling to see them or go to their university and speak with them face to face, they would probably share it with you. Not all food, not all vegetables, not all herbs, not all mushrooms are created equal. In other words, the substrate makes a difference, the environment it's growing in, and the strain itself. Remember, these universities spend decades so that strain that they have is a strain that no one in the world has. So we have those strains. The strains we produce, no one in the world really has other than these universities. We find that most production of mushrooms in the world are not regulated, from food service to even nutraceuticals. In the United States, I think last year there was only like 30,000 pounds grown in the United States of nutraceutical, and the almost 400,000 plus was imported from Asia and other parts of the world. So you really don't know what was the substrate, what was the environment, is there contamination, and many of the suppliers make extracts from it. And the reason extracts is, well, they've done a study on an extract at a university, but that doesn't, they're missing a lot of the beneficial chemistry. And our proposal is to set up standards as in the USDA, as well as other organizations to provide some certification so you know that it's clean and safe.